Well, we kind of are using AI to replace people because, I mean, how much would I have to pay for an assistant editor if I hired an in-house assistant editor to like cull through interviews and pull out insights and things like that and prep footage? So I guess in a way we are saving, but also we're saving a lot of time and we're able to speed through projects a lot faster. And we're getting to the same place that we would if we did it manually. We're just getting there faster, and faster is never bad for the client as long as the quality doesn't suffer it. Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast, a show where we bring together Marcom leaders from both inside and outside higher ed to give you fresh perspectives on successful organic content creation and strategy in higher education. My name is John Azoni. I'm the founder at Unveiled, a video production company working specifically with colleges on their storytelling and commercial video content. You can learn more about our work at unveiled.tv. That's UNVEILD. And if creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience is a priority for you, then you need to be subscribed to the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my weekly newsletter where we cover a lot of ground about content creation and strategy in higher ed. So sign up for that for free at unveiled.tv/newsletter. All right, let's get on with the show. All right. Hey, everyone. Look, we're just going to dive right in because my wife and kids are going to be home in about 20 minutes. Let's try to get through this little mini episode. I wanted to do a follow-up on my episode with Seth Odell a couple weeks ago because I geek out about talking about AI stuff, with folks on the show. And then I was like, man, I would really love to just kind of do a State of the Union address, State of the AI address on what we're using at Unveiled for video in case it's helpful for anyone else that's doing video or content creation. So off we go. I'm just going to jump right into it. All right, first up on our list, well, ChatGPT is very prevalent on the list throughout this episode. I'm going to tell you how I use it for speeding up production and editing. So use it really heavily, like very heavily. Our whole workflow lives in transcripts, basically meeting transcripts, interview transcripts with students, alumni, things like that. But in terms of like the pre-production, we record every discovery call, every kickoff call over Zoom. Those are automatically transcribed. That's one of the things I like about Zoom. It just auto records the whole meeting. I still take notes, but I like that it's also taking notes, exact word for word notes. And then you can immediately download the transcription. Once we've got that raw material from the client and like the client has explained to us what their needs are and where their problems are, where the gaps are, we feed those transcripts into ChatGPT and say, hey, write us a creative brief. And, we'll give it some parameters. We want to know what the issues are and what the client, specifically was looking to do and things like that. So we're asking it basically to talk to other production people that are going to come into this project, help them quickly acclimate to the needs of the project. And so it does a really great job of that. It does a really great job of distilling a meeting like that or multiple meetings into like, okay, here's the game plan. And then we take that and, translate that into a more detailed production and creative plan. But it just gives us something that we can hand off to editors, other collaborators to get them up to speed fast. I'll be honest, writing creative briefs is something that I hate doing. I just, I always just want people to download the ideas from my brain, I wish people could just, things could just live in my head and then other people, they could just live in other people's head exactly how they're living in my head. But since that tech doesn't exist yet, this is the next best thing because it's something I might otherwise procrastinate. It's like really documenting for everyone and very clearly handing off this project and communicating it in a way that everyone else needs to be communicated because they can't read my mind. So I need to get everything out of my mind and onto paper, and ChatGPT really helps that because all I have to do is have the conversation with the client, and it takes my input, the client's input, and says, all right, here's what you all talked about. And so it's great for that. The next is casting. So at Unveiled, we create custom casting portals for each college client that we work with. They get a unique link along with a set of optimized action-oriented email templates to send them to their students or alumni to get them to submit their stories. And so these invitees then submit videos based on prompts. We'll ask them things like, you will prompt to say, hey, when you submit your story, this is what we're looking for. What challenge did you overcome? Tell us about a professor who made a big impact on you, or what's something remarkable about your experience, like anything that's like more than just here's all the reasons I liked this school, or here's what I majored in and why it's great. So we use a tool called Bonjoro. I think it's spelled Bonjuro. Jor. I'd be terrible at a spelling bee because I can't spell like out of my head. I have to like write it down. Anyway, and so Bonjoro, we create a portal through Bonjoro. The client sends out a link, people click the link, submit a video themselves, it comes to us, and it automatically makes transcripts. And so once we get those transcripts, we know the school's messaging pillars already. And so we can start tagging each submission to, themes like, okay, capstone projects or student support or career outcomes, career development, all that stuff. And then we pull all those transcripts into ChatGPT, load it into a single chat thread, and share that thread with our team and with the client. And now we're all collaborating with the same data set, that it's digested all the transcripts, all the casting. We don't have to watch through, hours of people telling us their stories. And, 80% of them aren't really relevant to what we're trying to do. I mean, that's the point of doing casting, is we want to get to the needles in the haystack. But we can ask it things like, okay, who talked about scholarships, or who has the most emotional story about like pivoting careers, or who has the best story arc. We used that with a client recently, school down in North Carolina. We did casting for them, and then we ran all those transcripts into ChatGPT and said like, okay, who have the best like story arcs about like just like personal transformation. Like they went from A to Z because of this college. And it did a great job. I mean, we went right to those that it suggested, and it was spot on. Like those were solid stories. And we ended up producing 2 of the stories that it suggested, and all the rest weren't quite as good. I mean, we do watch through all of them, but when we're going back and we're making decisions, it's helpful to have ChatGPT understand all the casting submissions as well, and we can ask it questions. And here's where that came in handy on an actual project post-casting. So we worked with a university. We filmed 8 student interviews, and they covered a lot of ground. And the intention was to do 8 separate profiles and, cutting them into individual stories. But once we got into post, we realized a different format was going to work better, like breaking it up into topics instead of by person. So breaking it up into, say, okay, capstone project, here's the value of the capstone project. Here's 3 or 4 students that talked about that. But you just felt like the collection of their responses was more impactful than like any one story arc that they brought to their interview. So we pivoted and we used ChatGPT to help us save hours and hours remapping those transcripts into like this pivoted new direction into categories. So one of the categories that's important for this client is interpersonal skills. It's a data science school. So they're not just learning techie data science stuff. They're also learning how to interpret data and how to do data storytelling and how to speak data language to leadership up the chain in a way that they're going to understand. So that's a big pillar of the messaging that they're trying to push. So it helped us map all of the interview transcripts to like, okay, here's who all talked about interpersonal skills. Here's who talked about leadership development or real world, applications of data science, or here's who talked about pivoting careers. Like there was several students that one was like in accounting, and then she pivoted to a career in data science. Another was in biomedical engineering or something like that, like doing like cell research in like brain neuron stuff. And then she pivoted into data science. So we use ChatGPT to help us map all those interviews to those possible messaging pillars. And our editors used that throughout the entire project. We've been working on this for over a year now, because there's a lot of content, a lot of supplemental content that we're doing, and a lot of animations and stuff that are going with this. And that's been the one document that we keep going back to. And that would have taken us hours, if not days, to go through all those transcripts and manually map those messaging pillars. But we had a spreadsheet, took probably 30 minutes, and it was pretty accurate. Next would be custom GPTs for our long-term clients. So we built a custom GPT, we build a custom GPT for clients that we work with pretty repeatedly, especially ones that have more specific messaging. So we have the organization called the Joseph Project, really great nonprofit, one of our few non-higher ed clients. So they connect human trafficking survivors with pro bono legal support to help them get their records expunged and tickets taken care of, things that they racked up charges while they were being victimized. They connect them with a pro bono attorney that will advocate to the courts for them, say like, hey, this person was a victim, not a criminal. I mean, I think we've worked with them since 2021, we've told so many stories, survivor stories, attorney stories, partner stories. So we fed those into a GPT and built a custom GPT based on the stories that we've done. So it understands the story arcs that we're going for, and also the messaging pillar. Like, what are the questions that we always ask every time? Not the questions, because the questions differ from person to person, but like, what are the messaging things that we're trying to get out of them every time? For the attorney stories, it's a lot of like, here's why this work matters. And, here's the story of the need of these survivors that are coming out of that life with still these like shackles of like legal issues. And here's why we need more attorneys. So it just kind of understands like, these are what the campaigns are going after year after year. And it just, it knows their tone, goals, all that stuff. And so it's really like just having a collaborative, like a assistant creative director almost, that knows the brand already inside and out, based on data that we have manually produced. Like, we manually edited all these things. And to this day, even with the custom GPT, there has not been an edit that we fed an interview transcript into and just said, like, make me a video script and tell me what buttons to push, tell me what sound bites to put where. It's not good at that. And maybe if I was better at prompting, I could get it there and we could save them some money. But it's a very, manual storytelling process, but it's sped up a lot by having an essentially assistant creative director, and as Seth talked about in the past episode, like a subcontractor, essentially, that's helping us edit this thing and helping us pull insights from the transcripts. I mean, I can't edit without it anymore. I don't do very much editing, but we really encourage our editors to use ChatGPT, load these transcripts in, and ask it, insights about, okay, what are all the things that this person said about this? And we'll just be like, here's all the sound bites. We can just search those sound bites in the editing timeline, and the playhead will go right there, and we can just pull that clip and boom. And just, oh my gosh, I would think about like, even like, geez, 5 or 6 years ago, we had to manually watch through everything, and you'd have to take written notes. You'd make markers on the timeline too, but there's a big element of it where you just had to kind of remember who said what and who brought what vibes to the interview and where generally that existed in the interview. And we did a lot of scrubbing around trying to find a clip that I remembered that person saying. I couldn't remember what exactly he said, and we didn't have the transcript ability to search a transcript and have it connect with the video and all this stuff. So anyways, that has been just, I hate the word game. I hate when people say things are game changers, but this was a game changer. We'll just say, because I'm not playing a game. So it's like, this is a business changer. This is a creative process changer. Student and alumni success stories. You want to be doing more videos like this, showcasing outcomes from your student and alumni, but you're not. Why? Well, you probably know it's one of the most effective ways of communicating your school's value to prospective students, according to just about any Marcom leader you ask, or like fancy infographic you look at. But until now, you didn't know that it could be easy. You might have visions of the logistical nightmare of coordinating video shoot after video shoot and managing the firestorm of emails, trying to align everyone's schedules and all that. But what if all you had to do was find the stories to tell and hand them off, and then compelling videos just magically appear in your inbox? Here's how our storytelling subscriptions work. We're going to batch film a year's worth of student alumni stories. Could be faculty stories, any kind of like human story, over the course of a handful of days of production. And then every month, drip out one of those stories, plus a whole package of additional videos repurposed from that month's story to fill your content calendar with across the entire year. When it's all said and done, you're going to have 132 polished, branded videos. And here's the icing on the cake. We're going to give you all of that B-roll and raw interview footage, so you can use that however you want at no additional charge, like, trust me, a lot of other production companies would likely charge you extra for. So learn more at unveiled.tv. And if you want to talk more in detail, you can book a call with me, John, right there on our website. Okay, back to the show. Next, ChatGPT, again, here we are. When we're scripting, whether it's for a commercial campaign or something like, we had this, one of our regular clients is a business school, and their marketing director emailed me and was like, hey, we've got the president asking for, us to take this like 75-page student orientation presentation. It's basically like slide deck, a PowerPoint, and make it more creative. Like, can we make a training video like a Delta Airlines, like pre-flight video or something like that? Where it's got some flair to it, some personality. I knew their budget wasn't going to be a, $500,000, to $1 million Delta airline budget. And so we need to think of an idea that's going to be realistic. What can we realistically pull off without location fees and permits and an art department and props and wardrobe and makeup and talent, like actors, all this stuff? What can we get away with that's just ready-made? And so that was the challenge that we presented to ChatGPT, along with we fed in the orientation manual. Basically said, here's the vibe we're going for. Here's the constraint, the budget constraint. Here's the inspiration the client sent. We need a budget lean concept that we can pull off in one day, one location, with like one main talent that doesn't have to be a paid actor, and minimal extras and minimal like camera moves. Like, the more we can just stay put and just work on the delivery of the person that's on camera, rather than spending hours like picking up gear, tearing down, moving to another place, setting up, solving lighting problems, solving audio problems, getting set, tearing down, moving again. All that stuff just is expensive when it just eats up time in a production day. So anyway, those were the constraints. It spit out a bunch of ideas. 95% of them, I would say there's probably 10 ideas. 9 out of 10 of them were garbage. One of them was really interesting. And I didn't use that one. I didn't pitch that one verbatim, but it actually made me think of a similar adjacent idea that I was like, okay, that could, within this budget, that could actually be kind of cool and like kind of engaging for a new student to watch without trying too hard, without trying to be too like cheeky or, whatever. So, I was impressed. That's how my brain works. I need a creative partner to think with me. I am terrible at just pulling stuff out of thin air. I used to get so frustrated, when I was learning art. So art is my background, painting and drawing and stuff. And when I was earlier in my artist pursuits, I was really big fans of like these illustrators and people like Salvador Dali, who could just like come up with these fantastical scenes and paint them so beautifully and just out of thin air. He would just think, and I would try to do stuff like that. I just couldn't do it. My brain cannot just create something out of nothing. I need some sort of structure, some sort of jumping off point to go for. And so I would get so frustrated. And then I eventually just moved into abstract painting because I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can kind of like, I can move paint around and like kind of play with these different, shapes and marks and things like that. And it doesn't have to be literal. And I don't have to really think of this like on the nose concept or anything like that out of thin air. And so that's where I went. And then I studied abstract painting in college. Also portrait painting. I do like portrait painting, but again, you're painting something that's in front of you and you're interpreting that. I'm not a realistic painter, but like, interpreting that and putting different colors in the skin tones and different chunks of paint and things like that. That's fun for me, starting with something that's already existing. Okay, so that's a big part of how I use ChatGPT as an ideation partner. And you'll hear that. Everyone on LinkedIn is like, use ChatGPT as an ideation partner. So that's one that you probably could have predicted. Seth talked about in his episode, and since that episode, I was inspired, and I did use this on a animation project we're working on with a client where we're doing a case study on a project that they had one of their team of master's students work on developing this cool like AI tech. So we didn't have I needed to get the storyboards. I needed to get my animator going on the storyboards and going on, the anime. We need to get this process going. And I was like, oh shoot, we got to do the casting for the voiceover, but that's kind of like a several day process. You got to post the thing, you got to wait for submissions to come in, you got to cull through them. Casting is a whole thing, and then you got to send it to the client, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, my animator is like waiting to get started. So I was like, I'm going to pull a Seth here and run this through 11 labs. I put my script into 11 labs and, picked a voice tone. It was like a kind of younger, sort of like maybe 30s age female. And after a couple of iterations, it was pretty solid. Like, you could launch with that. We're not going to. There is an AI quality to the voiceover, but it's better than me just voicing this in a male voice when the client wants a female. or whatever. So it was a huge, I mean, I think I spent maybe $15, I don't know, like a month subscription or something for 11 labs, and got a quick voiceover and saved a few days of delay on this project. So that was great. And then another time I've used this is for ADR, as a video term I think it stands for additional dialogue recording. I don't know much about like technical video stuff. Like I couldn't tell you what a bit rate is or like what a megabit is. It's some amount of bits. I could tell you that a terabyte is 1,000 gigs. And a gig is 1,000 megabytes. Could I tell you what a byte is? No. Anyway, so, but in ADR is where you're basically recording a overdub of dialogue. And we were telling a story of this one woman, and she was telling her story kind of in a roundabout way. Like I needed to shorten the edit, and I needed to get from point B to point C directly. I needed like just one sentence that clarified where she was going without having to go on this super long tangent to make it make sense for the viewer and then have them lose interest because it's a long tangent. So anyway, so I basically, with permission, cloned her voice in 11 labs from the interview that we did. And then I scripted the exact line and then had it say that in her voice. It sounded flawless. I mean, you could not tell where this ADR spot is in the video if you watched it. And we covered that little spot with B-roll, obviously, because we're not going to map that to her voice or to her saying it on camera. So we covered that with B-roll. Boom, saved a lot of probably drop off, what would otherwise have been drop off from the viewer, or having to do like a text slide there to explain it. So that was great. That's the thing that, you want to get permission for that stuff because, I don't think everyone likes the prospect of having their voice cloned. So you should probably ask them before you do that. It might be something, what I think would be interesting is in your media release forms. If you have a media release form, I don't know how ethical this would be to just bury it in the sort of admissions paperwork that they fill out that says basically we're going to film you or take pictures of you and you don't have a say in that. You're consenting to that. I don't know if it'd be ethical to put it in there, but if you had a media release form for a certain project and you were like, hey, this is how we're going to use this. You give us permission. Also, you give us permission to clone your voice and use AI to just to tweak what you're saying. We're not putting words in your mouth. If there is a legal sensitive way to say that, that might be a smart thing to get sign off on. And that's something that we've been kind of thinking about in our work is maybe that's just a default permission that we want to get, because the reality is if we need them to say something specific, we would have to bring them into a studio to record the little thing or send them an audio recorder, and then audio is not going to sound right. And we have to match it with EQ and all this stuff. And it's just going to save everyone a headache if I can just put it into 11 labs and say, actually, she said this. I want her to say this. Boom, 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 boom. And then she just says it and then I just plug it in and then I can keep rolling, So, and then, okay, now we're into generative video. So now this is tool we're testing is Google VO, and it's the only AI tool that I have even gotten close to using for a real project. It's fun to play with a tool like Runway. Last time I tried to play with it was about a year ago, and it was terrible, and it was slightly better than the year before that I tried to play with it. It's just, there's been a lot of hype around AI video, and I haven't seen the use case for it. But for something like the Joseph Project, I mentioned the human trafficking survivor stories, where we're dealing with traumatic stories, and we're not really filming reenactments. So we don't have the budget to hire. If you watch a Netflix docuseries and you pay attention, so much of that B-roll is reenactments. And they film it in a way that's kind of abstract. They'll kind of blur out faces, or they'll show you kind of a close-up of hands doing something. So it kind of sells the vibe, but without being too on the nose and too literal, stock footage. And that's the approach we take with the Joseph Project, where it's we're going to a stock footage site we use artgrid.io, and they have very cinematic footage. It's a whole different tier of stock footage. It's not your typical stock photo, cheesy stuff. But we are looking for something. It takes a while. It takes a while to find a clip that could work, that's kind of abstract enough to sell this sort of dark moment in this person's life without being too literal and without looking like stock footage too much. Google VO has opened the door, at least, to us being like, okay, this might be an option. With stock footage, you can only get so specific. You can't get too detailed in what you're looking for, because it just doesn't exist. But with something like VO, you can tell it exactly what you want and work with it, and it will come out with something usable. And I feel like for a reenactment, where I think the viewer on some level knows that this is a reenactment, this isn't the real person. We're not trying to say this is the actual person that we're interviewing, but when she was 4 years old or something like that. We're not trying to say that. I think the viewer kind of gets it. I think there's a little bit more leeway in a setting like a video for the Joseph Project, where a Google VO situation could actually be useful and be believable. So it's a powerful option for those moments when you don't have a specific B-roll clip, but you need something and you don't want to use cheesy stock footage. Worth playing around with. Then we talked about this on the episode of Seth, visual cleanup with generative fill. So Photoshop's generative fill is just awesome. I love it. It is very good. Not always perfect, but it's good. So sometimes we'll get a photo, from a client, and it's almost good, but someone's cut out, or like it's framed weird, or it's like framed too far away, or it's framed too close, or it's vertical and we wanted a horizontal one. And, we can take that into Photoshop and select the areas where we wish something was different, and it will fill in the photo as if it was taken that way. It's taking cues from the actual photo part and then expanding on that imagery. And it's amazing. And we used it one time with one of our clients as engineering student, master's student story we were telling. And he was telling the story of, the part of the story was giving a presentation at OSTEM. So it was out in STEM fields part of his story was, he's part of the LGBTQ community, and he found community at the school, at the university he was attending, and he found community in OSTEM and stuff like that. And so he sent me this picture of him giving this monumental presentation that was really important to him at OSTEM, but his arm was cut off. So I'm like, okay, it's like I could have used it, like that, but I was like, okay, this calls for some Photoshop generative fill. And I pulled it in there, expanded the canvas on the side where his arm was cut off, and filled it in, and it looked perfect. I mean, you could not tell me where the AI part was if I showed it to you from scratch and you didn't know that I did that. So really impressive, was able to use that. And then it just became what would have been kind of an awkward part of the video. Like, why is his arm cut off? Why is he way over on the side of the frame? Became now not distracting. And that's half the job of editing, is telling a story without you noticing distracting elements. So that is a trick that we've used. And Premiere is coming out, with some generative fill type stuff, and it's early days. But like, if you're a videographer and you wish someone like had held a pause a little bit longer in their interview, or you had a little bit longer of a clip of them doing a certain action or whatever it is, Premiere now you can sort of like expand a clip, and it works in the same way as generative fill for Photoshop, but just with video. So I haven't played around with it too much, haven't really had much of a need for it, and admittedly wish I had more time to experiment. I really do. I used to have a day every week that I would, like every Friday, I wouldn't take meetings and I would just experiment. I'd either be in my art studio, like painting or making stuff, or just doing things that creatively filled me up in a different way than doing project-based work. And I would experiment with like stuff with like AI and things like that. And I've just gotten away from that as we've gotten busier. We just slammed this year, which is a great problem to have, but I do miss just experimenting. So I wish I had more time. If I can get some time to experiment with that, I will report back. But next on the list, audio cleanup. We use DaVinci Resolve Studio, and Adobe Premiere has audio cleanup tools. They're not nearly as good as DaVinci Resolve. And Adobe has like a podcast enhancer, like I forget what it's called. If you search like Adobe podcast audio cleanup or something like that, it's an online tool. You can upload your clip and it will do a great job. DaVinci Resolve is a color grading software, but they've done such a great job in the last several years of making it a really competent editing, like a solid competitor to Adobe Premiere. But one of the AI tools that they've implemented is this voice isolator tool. And you have to have the studio version. You can get DaVinci Resolve for free, but you have to pay It's not that expensive for the studio version, maybe like $400 or $500 or something like that. Or if you buy a Blackmagic camera, it comes with a subscription to the studio version because Blackmagic owns DaVinci. So that's how I got mine. But the voice isolator, it has, one time I filmed this event for this corporate client and they flew their speaker in, like their CEO from Germany, and I was getting all kinds of interference in my wireless lavalier mics. I think there's like a police station nearby, and it was like something was like jamming the signal. I could not get it to stop like being all like fuzzy. So I went to Micro Center on a lunch break before this CEO was up to speak. And I bought a voice recorder, and like it's just a pocket one and a lav mic that you could plug in. And so I mic'd him up with that because it wasn't wireless. It'll just go hardware right into the recorder, and then I could take that SD card in and plug it in, sync it up with the video. So, and then I was like, just in case, let me put this other microphone connected to my camera. Let me put it over here, kind of in the corner under this desk, kind of where he's going to be trotting about, walking around, talking. Probably won't use it, but just as a backup. So the mic from the recorder that I bought came unplugged in his, I don't know what, it's not like he was doing jumping jacks, but it just somehow like, I don't know if he messed with it or something, but it came unplugged. The audio was completely shot. I was freaking out. And, and so I brought it home like last ditch effort. Let me just try this DaVinci thing. My God, it wasn't perfect, but it sounded like he was mic'd up from this mic that was like 15 feet away from him. I mean, it was incredible. So, I mean, that like DaVinci Resolve, I no longer worry when there's like a refrigerator running or there's like a blower in the background or something, like the AC's on when we're doing an interview. It's not ideal. We always try to fix those audio problems in camera and not fix them in post, but there's sometimes you can't just shut off the AC to a big college building, like the facilities guys not just like hanging out on the shoot with us. But thankfully there's DaVinci Resolve Studio's got this voice isolator and it works so good. So I love it. It's great. And lastly, I used AI to do this entire episode, and this was a groundbreaking moment for me because it changes the way that I can talk to you guys and do these episodes, because I don't riff very well. Believe it or not, I'm reading off a script this whole time. I'll just give you a little transparent behind the scenes. I need a script and I can riff off script, and I've done a lot of that in this episode. But like I need something to like keep coming back to, and I happen to be able to can kind of read without it sounding totally like I'm reading. But so what I did last week, I was like, shoot, I need an episode. I didn't have a guest lined up for this week. So I'm like, let me just sit in my car and like pull out my voice recorder app, and I'm just going to ramble into my phone. And this was something that Seth talked about in his episode a couple weeks ago, is just rambling into, his like voice recorder thing. He's got something called whisper flow or something like that. But you can take a couple extra steps and just use your voice recorder app on your phone and then run it through some sort of transcripting thing and then run it through ChatGPT. That's what I did. So I just started rambling about all the AI stuff that I'm using and why it's great. I took that transcript, I ran it through ChatGPT and said, basically keep the content and the flavor of this episode, but just clean it up. Like take all the ums out, make me make sense, because I was just rambling and pausing a lot and not making sense, just talking all over the place on a million tangents and kind of figuring out what I was trying to say as I was going. And ChatGPT gave me a great script, and I've read off of it for about 50% of this. It doesn't talk like me. I think there was one part in here where it told me to say that a particular AI tool was clutch. And I guess I forgot to prompt it that I am not 14, and I never said clutch unironically in my life. So we skipped that part of the script. We riffed around that one. But so yeah, you're listening to AI John, but like a little bit of AI John. I mean, it's like John, but then it was like AI, but then it's like John again. So anyway, as you can see, we kind of are using AI to replace people, because like it saves me, how much would I have to pay for an assistant editor if I hired an in-house assistant editor? 40,000 minimum to like, cull through interviews and pull out insights and things like that and prep footage. So I guess in a way we are saving hiring someone, but also we're saving a lot of time, and we're able to speed through projects a lot faster. And we're getting to the same place that we would if we did it manually. We're just getting there faster. And faster is never bad for the client as long as the quality doesn't suffer. And so that's important to me. I don't want to delay things. I want to finish the project and get it to you so you can get it out and you can move on to the next thing. So these tools have been great, and I'm sure there's some AI tools that I'm forgetting about, but those are the main ones. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, email me, john@unveiled.tv, UNVEILD. John is spelled JOHN. Fun fact, you can tell how to spell John's name by if their actual name is Jonathan or John. If their actual name is just John, it's JOHN. If their actual name is Jonathan, more likely that it's JON. Okay, so that's just a fun fact. All right, thanks for listening. Love you. Hey, thanks so much for listening. 3 things I want to invite you to before you go. Number 1, if you want to know what's working right now in higher ed video, like what videos are getting tons of views, likes, comments, all that, you can get ungated access to our report, aptly named What's Working in Higher Ed Video, a comprehensive guide for higher ed Marcom leaders and content creators. So check it out at unveiled.tv/higheredvideo, and you might want to bookmark it because it's designed to be a resource for you that you can keep referring back to for inspiration. Number 2, reminder to sign up for my free newsletter all about content creation and strategy at unveiled.tv/newsletter. And number 3, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my name is John Azoni. It's spelled JOHNAZONI. I'm on there all day, every day, for better or for worse, posting regular content and engaging with folks like you. So I'd love to connect with you on there. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. And as always, I am cheering you on. Okay, bye.